is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the altar again, and this time we got round three with Telle of the Word Alive. It is great to be able to talk with you, man. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man. I can't believe the Falling in Reverse Escape the Fate tour that you did last time we spoke was 3.5 years ago. It feels like a lifetime.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you say it like that, it feels like forever ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I could like recap like every move I took at Webster Hall like on that day and like where I was sitting. It was pretty surreal.
I feel like that was a really good show for us. I can't remember.
It was an awesome
I
show.
we had like a lot of really great shows on that tour.
Yeah, that was a good time. What a hell of a tour to go before the world ended, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's so awesome to have you here. The new album, Hard Reset, is absolutely kick ass. For people who haven't heard the full album yet, though, do you feel like the first singles that we heard so far, such as New Reality or Slow Burn, Strange Love, etc., is like a good representation of this whole album, or is that just the tip of the iceberg?
I feel like it's just the tip of the iceberg, and I think one of the major things that separates this album for me is there are no two songs on the album that are like really similar to each other. It's like they each have their own kind of identity, and there's a lot of ebb and flow to the record as a whole. So, the way it was written, the way that the track listing flows, it's like it's meant to be consumed the old school way, like, from front to back. And that if you love the singles, I think you're going to love the album. If you're looking for maybe a couple other things that our band does or do well, you're going to find those things too on the record. So I'm excited to see, where fans, find themselves on the scale of loving it or, everything in between. But I think it's our best record. I think it's the most like well-rounded like version of the Word Alive that we've had yet. So,
I,
but I'm very biased. So,
I mean, I usually refrain from asking what does the record name mean, but is that sort of like the meaning of Hard Reset in a way? Were you kind of like trying to, not neglect, but sort of like, just not pick up where you left off after Monomania and kind of like take a new approach? Did it almost feel like a new beginning for the Word Alive?
absolutely. With the pandemic and the world shut down, our livelihood's gone. You question every single thing about your life and what you're going to do. We had the lineup change. And so for us, like, Hard Reset is, I've said it, I think a couple other times, like it's the most like direct album title, like we could come up with. And, how came up with it was like, it really did feel like time stopped and we got to like look at everything that the band had done, both good and bad, and kind of get to evaluate ourselves from like the outside looking in, and then take that approach of like, okay, let's take like the best parts of our band and like what would that record sound like if we could give the some of the technicality, with drums and guitars, the stronger, I think, like overall songwriting that we've developed over our career, the really like intentional lyrics, like how can we combine all these things at like different eras of our band? We've done, you know we've prioritized different things at times, and how can we kind of put that all into one thing? And I mean, I think that's what Hard Reset is to me. It's like we turned the Word Alive off and then we turned it back on, and it's like a refreshed version of the band. And it doesn't, to say like, we're not negating the past. It's actually quite the opposite. It's like we're looking at the whole thing, not just like one album, but like the whole 15 years. And our goal now with this lineup is, we're never going to play set lists again that are like not showcasing like the full discography of the Word Alive. Like our thing isn't to just like beat you over the head with our new material per se, because like we want to celebrate these songs in a live setting. So Hard Reset to me is like a fresh approach at the band and how we play live shows, how how the record sounds, just like the energy of the band, just the way we interact with our fans, just trying to be the most authentic version of ourselves that we could possibly be. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I think one reason why I've always respected the word alive and why I think your fans resonate with you is that I think every album from Empire to now is representative of who you guys are at that particular moment, and it is an honest
Yeah.
aspect of it. And you could tell what will be off. I've definitely mentioned this to you before, but you could tell what song would be off of Empire or Deceiver or Life Cycles, Real, etc. But when you enter the new songwriting process, especially what you just told me about Hard Reset, was there sort of like a preconceived vision in a way? Did you go into the making of Hard Reset knowing that this was the approach you wanted to take, or did it just kind of turn out that way?
It was very intentional. When we had the lineup change, immediately after that call happened, Zach and I got on the phone, and Zach was just like, "I'm with you." Like, so like, what are we doing? And I was like, I have a vision for this record for the band that I think you're gonna love, that our fans are gonna love, and so we talked it out, and he was just all for it basically. So we just kind of went to work, and um, yeah. So like to directly answer your question, it was like it was not only intentional, but we really thought about like every song, every part, and that's why there is so much variety. I think on this album is the word alive, and we didn't want to run from that. We don't want to be the band that every song could sound the same or like it's on the same record. For us, like that's kind of I hope like that will be long after we're gone, something that people will come to appreciate. Maybe they don't in this, time period of their lives, but I love that about our band. And I think a lot of our fans love that we can have a song like this and we can have a song like this and like this. Um, and that to me is what makes our band special and what I love as a fan of music from my own band. And so we just tried to showcase the diversity we have in our interests while cohesively sounding like the word alive, like not trying to sound like we were trying to sound like another band or someone else is doing something and it's working, it's really cool, like, and there's that influence. The influence for this record is the word alive. Like internally we looked at our own songs, we looked at our own fan base reaction to songs live, and all those factors, and we were influenced by ourselves in the last 15 years of making this our career. So I think it's going to be fun for our fans to really dive in and explore this record.
Um, and I never asked you this before, but because I've always said that art is life, and when you bring it into the world, it can grow and it can develop, and it can eventually die as well. So, like, do you want every album to almost be just a snapshot of who you are at that particular time? Do you want Real to just remain in 2014? Do you want Violent Noise to just remain in 2018? Or do you think that maybe the art could evolve with you and you learn more about it as you evolve as an artist and as more people interpret it as well? Does that bring another lease of life to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the beauty of music is, your life experience, the human experience. You go through and you have all these different moments in your life, and maybe a song that didn't resonate with you or you didn't connect with or couldn't relate to um, when you were 20. When you hit 30, you're like, wow, like this song means so much more to me now. And that has happened. Like for me, there are songs that I didn't really like care for as much for a while, and then some songs where I loved that, like they've kind of like softened on me because there's the meaning has even changed for me. And if that's me writing the lyrics and and experiencing my own music in different ways, I think fans can also do that too. And I think you see that where like sometimes, say like a viral moment like Running Up That Hill, like becomes this big song again in like mainstream, and it's I, why am I spacing on the name of the show that blew it up? Anyways, it's like songs can explode and connect at any moment, and that is art. Like all it takes is people having access to it, and So as long as we're making music, I feel like we're going to be able to create not only new fans of the Word Alive, but I think some old fans who've maybe like, their life has taken them in different direction with what they connect with musically or artistically. You can find your way back. All it takes is one song for someone to be like, okay, and then they do a deep dive, and you're like, we've heard it a million times where someone's like kind of shit on one of our songs or our records, and that person like 6 months, a year, 5 years later is like, man, like I actually like I love this now. And that's art. Like it is subjective and it changes, and what it means to me when I wrote it isn't necessarily going to be what it means to me 10 years from now. And I think that's just a part of life.
Absolutely, absolutely, and because it's funny too, because when I watch you play, as somebody who's seen the Word Alive now numerous times, the show definitely is a moment in time. Like it captures a moment that, and there's no two Word Alive shows that are alike. It's like lightning; it's gone and it's quick.
Yeah.
So, and I could tell that you're very present when you perform, the way that your stage presence is, and the way that you channel that energy. So, but when you play like an older song live, does it almost put you back in the mindset of where you were at that time in a way, or being that you're very much in the moment, it feels like this is just today's version of that older song? And it's sorry for the construction in the background if you hear that.
No, you're fine. You know what? I think it's a mixture. Like, sometimes I'll be, singing a song and I'm like, I'm so happy I don't feel this way anymore, but it's, it's also like, it's nice. It's kind of like, you recognize, yeah, where you were and how far you've come. So it's like now I can be performing the song because I'm like, maybe this is what someone needs that's in the crowd tonight, and this is how they feel. And then because I do try to stay like connected to the crowd and the energy in the room, I can see it. Like I really try to pay attention to like who's connecting with the whichever song. And people always ask me like, what's your favorite song to play live? And my answer has always been the same. It's whichever one like the crowd is reacting to the most, whether that's everyone's singing, everyone's jumping, going crazy, like, because that's what to me like it's all about. Like writing songs and that part of my artistry is something I love doing, and I'm so passionate about it. And I'll make songs for the rest of my life, but I'm not gonna be performing on stage for the rest of my life. So to me, it's like it's almost like a separate entity where it's like I'm just celebrating live music because I think it's magical and I think it's special. And that means a lot that you feel that like present moment, or me being present in the moment, because I really do try to like I try not to say the same things all the time. Some people are like, especially frontmen, are like they have to say the same thing in the same spot every night, otherwise it like throws them off. And I understand that. I'm like the opposite. I feel like I want to like create each show is its own thing, and like you said, like I never want it to feel like you're seeing the same show over and over and over again. I want it to be different every time,
Yeah.
because that's what I love when I go and see a band.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends really. Like, again, Word Alive, very present in the moment. When I'm watching you, I'm only focused on the Word Alive. But a good example, last year I don't know how much into prog metal you're on, but I saw Porcupine Tree last year, and I saw bands like Opeth as well. And like when they're playing, they have a very ambient sound, and they have these video projections that sort of like take you into another dimension and sort of take you into an alternate reality. So while you're unequivocally at a concert, you're also kind of like in an alternate universe. I think in the end, and you create your own universe in a way, but I think in the end you just kind of make people appreciate where they are at that very moment in time. So I think you kind of make reality into a better place rather than just taking us out of that reality.
I've never heard that before, and that's one of the coolest things anyone's ever said about us. So I appreciate that.
I'm honored. I'm honored. Depending on what you're singing about, because you've not only have dabbled with a lot of different sounds in the Word Alive, but you've touched upon many different subject matters lyrically as well. So depending on what you're singing about, if it's more coming internally or more externally, does it maybe resonate with you differently, or does it channel a different energy when performing it, or is the writing process for it in general even different?
So the writing process is almost always a little bit different. I can't say I start any two songs the same. Um, I, our producers that we've worked with, like I always say, like I take whatever I'm feeling that day and the energy of what's going on in my life, and I just try to channel it into whatever I'm going to create that day. I rarely am like going in and I'm like, okay, today I'm going to write a heavy song, or today I'm going to write a slow song, or today I'm going to write a super melodic, fast. It's never that. It always comes, I will say the one thing that is the same is it always comes from like the emotion. Like, what am I feeling today? What's like on my heart that I feel like I need to say or should. And so because of that, yeah, sometimes certain songs will hit me differently. Like sometimes I can be like in a more performative headspace, and then other times I'm like, man, like I remember I'm thinking of like what made me write this song, and maybe sometimes that's anger, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's frustration, sometimes it's desperation almost. um and sometimes I get in my own head or feels like when I'm playing those, and those shows are like the therapeutic shows. Like the performative ones are like the fun, it's like fun, and it's like, oh, this is what I love doing. But some days like I need the show just as much as like fans do, and that's just, I think, the reality, especially in our genre of music. I think there's a lot of that takes place where, um, not that it's an escape, but it can be, but it's almost like a therapy session
Yeah.
of sorts, and it's like very cathartic, especially singing and screaming. Like you're literally like pushing out so much energy, um, that I think for me it just changes day to day and song to song, which is why I love it. Like some days I'm like, man, that's my favorite time I've ever performed this song that I performed 100 times or 200 times. And then other days it's just like, I'm just going to try to sing this the best I possibly can, and they're both good.
Yeah. Well, also, because sometimes you are working on a song for days or weeks or months on end. So do you find it, Mike, maybe the longer you're working on something, the harder it is to sort of maintain the initial inspiration or the emotional spark of the idea?
I oddly enough, not really, because I think just like the way that I am, I'm a very like wear my heart on my sleeve, open, communicative person, where like it's very easy for me to fall into what I'm singing about, because a lot of it is either my life, the things I've experienced, and a lot of it is like on the more negative side. And I think there's a lot of musicians. My friend Landon from Plot, who just actually posted this morning of their new song, and he was like, this song is very negative, and after you watch or listen to this, like make sure you go watch some like cat videos or something fun, because like it is dangerous to like consume just only negative all the time. And um for me, and what he said, and I completely agree, it's just so much easier for me to write from a place, even if I'm not sad or upset in that moment. It's easy for me to connect to those because I just have felt those moments so intensely or deeply in my life that it's never that hard for me to like go back there. And sometimes it's easier to write about it, later, the further you get away from it, because you have a little bit different, you gain perspective on the situation. So I can write about something sad, but it doesn't have to be like this is the end of my life or the world. And so there's like the balance of this is a real thing that's happened or that I've experienced, or sometimes it's based off movies that inspired me. But it's like now I can also like kind of have that little silver lining, like tinge, where there is hope in our songs. And not every song, but there's just enough that I think people understand, like we're not trying to be sad or angry just for the sake of those emotions. It's just that's what is easier for me to connect to.
Well, you led me like perfectly into the next question, and you might have even just answered it. But like, because you've one subject matter you've never shied away from, and I think that's why your fans admire you, is addressing your own personal demons. And you've been brutally honest in your songs about anger or depression or desperation, as you mentioned before. And I've always said that when that can be the fuel to your fire, sometimes artists can become victimized by their own product in a way where like the madness that is the art can end up consuming them rather than you consuming the art itself. So is there an art to addressing that type of subject matter without sort of like succumbing to the madness or in a way, and has that made the songwriting process just as deteriorating as it can be cathartic?
It definitely goes both ways. I think when I was younger, I didn't really understand who I was or my emotions as much. Now that I'm older, sometimes I'll be writing and I'm like, okay, you need an actual therapy session. And that's just part of, I think, growing up too and understanding like yourself in life a little bit more is I I want to be happy. And if I find myself maybe there's too much negativity in what I'm feeling or writing, then I have to then take a step back and be like, okay, like, am I self-sabotaging something in my life? Am I fixating on something that's negative that I can't control, or that it's kind of having this power over me? And so definitely, like when I'm writing, it sometimes is like a reminder to be like, okay, like, yes, these are songs and you're writing this and this is a form of like entertainment almost, but it's also because the way I write, it's like, okay, like this is some of your actual real life and you might need to like address whatever is going on a little bit more, um, less artistically and more like, making changes in your life and trying to grow as a human.
Yeah, some people have like deliberately like kept their life in a relatively shitty situation
Yes.
as a
Yeah.
means of artistic inspiration. One that doesn't work. It may work for like a couple songs, but eventually that's just gonna get boring as if your life wasn't in that shitty situation. So there has to be a balance, and I'm really glad to hear you say too, like, because I don't, no matter how, like, I just interviewed one of the most evil bands ever yesterday, Pro Fanatica, and that was a fantastic band. And it's gonna be funny, like you're right next to them in the videos, but like
Yeah.
everybody, no matter how evil the music is, black metal, death metal, metalcore, whatever, everybody has the desire to be happy in a way. It's like it's like a human instinct, like where you force yourself to breathe. Everybody has a desire to be happy. So it feels good to like hear you say that, because it's always good to not be ashamed of, the darkness that you feel inside, but there also isn't a shame in just being happy and achieving that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like, sometimes age is really just, or time is like the thing that you need, because I won't say everyone has been toxic or anything, but like I've definitely like given into toxic behaviors or mindsets that just don't lead you towards happiness, and it doesn't lead you towards like personal growth. And I will try and fail for the rest of my life at that, but I do know that what I want for myself is peace and happiness, and I think that's what we all want: peace, happiness, love, like, feeling like you matter. All these things are at the core of like what a human wants more than anything. So I think that's why we kind of all gravitate towards heavy music, is there's almost like this odd wholesomeness to the darkness. And I think, some people get that and some people just don't. And, but I think that's why, a lot of people like listening to sad songs helps them or something like that. That kind of mentality is, it's just feeling like you're not alone, and like the feelings that you're going through, it's like, okay, like other people are feeling these same ways, like, and it just helps you to cope and move forward, hopefully.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm so glad to have heard you like sort of like reference that in that regard too. But here's the other thing too, because the Word Alive, consisting of 4 to 5 members, like, every time I ask somebody what was the making of an album like, and they answer with "we all collectively came together," or "it was all mutual," I don't really believe it. If you're in a band with 4 to 5 other people and you're writing a dozen or so songs, you all have your own different experiences, your different inspirations, your different goals. But do you think that maybe all of you being in your different worlds could actually maybe help add contrast to the sound and maybe help add variety?
It goes all of the ways, and it depends on the people in the bands and the temperaments and personalities and your relationship to each other and then collectively. And I think that's part of the diversity you hear throughout the Word Alive sound is, certain personalities shining through more than others, and whether that's song to song or album to album. Um, and then for Hard Reset, I think it was a little less of like the the ego side and more of the let's try to write what not only we're going to have fun playing live, but we feel is going to stand the test of time a little bit more than just like, am I playing or singing the coolest thing that I can? It was just written differently, obviously this time around too, it was just Zach and I, or just Zach and a producer, or just myself and a producer. So I would say, the phrase like, too many cooks in the kitchen can be definitely very true for a lot of bands, and it has been for us at times, but also that collectiveness has worked super well for our band. So I don't think it's one or the other. Like, we've sat in a room and written an incredible song that like really connected with our fans. We've sat in a room and written a song and it was trash. And then we've all written individual songs that have connected and individual songs that don't. And that again is like part of the fun of creating. And so this time around it was a lot easier because it would just be me and Zach being like, do you fuck with this? I fuck with this. Do you fuck with this? I fuck with this. And or be like, could this part be a little cooler? Is this too long? Like, it was just so easy to go back and forth. And with too, like, we've never really talked about like the vision of a record before we wrote most of the songs. So this time around, it was like we knew what the goal was, and so it made it a lot easier because the second something started to pull away and wasn't in that, or it wasn't going towards that goal, it was a lot easier for us to like cut that out or just be like, you know what, this is a waste of time. Let's scrap this idea before it ever really gets started, because we just know it wasn't a part of the goal. Yeah. So it made it a lot easier this time around. But it at the same time, it will of course sound different because there's not the influence of the previous members. So it will be a new version of the Word Alive, like no matter what, just because this is the first time we've written a record like this.
Yeah, of course. And I have two more questions for you. This is like sort of like a debate in a way, like I like asking artists in a way. With inspiration, is that something that could really be sought out? Can you really go out and look inspiration and grab it like you're pulling a book off a shelf? Or is it not really inspiration unless it strikes you?
I think it might be different for different people. For me, if I'm in the studio, it's kind of like more tunnel vision, where a lot of the outside distractions of my life like kind of go away, and I'm just like in this creative headspace and like energy. And so for me, the inspiration like finds its way to me when I'm in the studio, but I'm not necessarily like struck with inspiration like all the time. I'll go a while and just not have anything, but and maybe that's pigeonholed me almost in a way, but I feel like leaning into what you're feeling is the easiest way to feel inspired, because that's the most real thing you could ever write about, is how you feel in that moment. So I don't think there's any right or wrong way to feel or get inspired, unless you're seeking something like we were talking about earlier, like you're seeking out something negative to feel something negative to then write about it. Then I think it's the wrong intention. Of course. Other than that, I think it's just about connecting with yourself and what you feel and what you want to talk about.
Of course. And the final question I wanted to ask you is, taking a break from the Word Alive, but I actually wanted to talk to you about this last year, because last year was the 15-year anniversary of the first time I actually ever heard your voice with the Voyager EP from In Fear and Faith. And I know, yeah. Long time ago, I was half the age that I am. I'm almost 30, and I was a freshman in high school when that came out. Or no, not even. That came out in 07. I wasn't even in high school yet. I was in junior high. But
I love that.
Yeah, but because even with because I think you've even had a somewhat of a sense of humor as well with with tracks like "Pack Your Bags, We Leave at Dawn" and "There Be Pirates Among These Seas" and stuff. I'm just wondering what the sort of headspace you were in during the making of that EP, because I could be wrong, but that was probably like the first real release that you were on as well. So just a memory lane
Yeah.
bonus question.
Um, that it's so funny. I haven't been asked anything about Fear and Faith in a long time. It's it's funny because recently, you know, the all the band we've started to like talk again, like all the different members, and Fear and Faith had a lot of members over the years, but it was kind of like a chaotic, toxic environment for most everyone in
Oh,
the band. But we're all like, we didn't know anything else at the time either, and what I would say the headspace was in was we didn't even know what we were doing really. We were just trying to like write the coolest shit we could, and I was very into, from First Last and Chiodos and these bands that were like exploding at that time, where the singing was very high, and I was, and obviously Circus Survive, Anthony Green, Sosin. Um, I I was very heavily inspired by like what was making me excited to like want to go to shows at the time. So I was just trying to like, I'll never forget, and it's funny because me and Craig Owens are good friends, for many years now. But I remember I'd be in the studio and I was like, how high did Craig sing in that song? Okay, I want to sing a little bit higher, and it was like things like that where it ended up sounding cool. I love that EP. I think it's like a really, really, really good post-hardcore screamo metalcore blend of thing. Like I think it stands on its own, and we were doing our own thing, especially with a lot of the piano stuff that we were doing and the orchestration at that time. But it was funny because I couldn't tell you what half the songs were about, because it was like a lot of it was like writing one-liners and things that I thought sounded cool, because I hadn't even yet understood what like songwriting really could be. And so it's funny, like yeah, it's a lot of like buzzwords and things that I was like, like silence is screaming. It's like silence is screaming your name, and you say you're not at war. Like I was like, oh, this is the coolest line I've ever thought of in my life, and I still think it's cool today. And it just means so much, something completely different than probably what I was even writing about back then. And I don't even know. It was probably about a girlfriend or something like fucking
like
with
every
me.
metalcore song was at that time, pretty much. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, look, that's the type of, I grew up with all genres of metalcore, whether it was the Killswitch Engages or Shadows Falls to the We Came as Romans, and I really thought that that Voyage EP was like almost to plant a seed by We Came as Romans before to plant a seed by We Came as Romans in a way. Like I think that EP was ahead of its time, is that it provided a lot of forethought of what metalcore would come to be and whatnot,
Yeah,
and like how it would evolve since then. People thought metalcore was a
I
trend.
agree.
Yeah, and I just want to point something out too. Everybody who was in those metalcore bands, look, Caleb from Attack Attack would go on to Beartooth. Courtney from I Wrestled a Bear once would go on to form Spirit Box. You would go on
Yeah,
from In Fear of Fate to The Word Alive. So like, one of the members of Woe Is Me formed Issues. So like, it's cool to see like
yeah,
how like it kind of like evolved from there. I think, and Texas in July with Era. So yeah,
yep,
like
yep.
all that whole genre, despite whether it was a trend or a moment in time, I think in the end that had a legacy of its own and a nostalgia factor to be celebrated.
I agree. I think there's, in the Word Alive is a part of it from like that 2008, 9 to like 2014, that era of metalcore, I think is like separated. But the era that came just before it is like, I think that's like my favorite. Like I love that 2005, 2006, 2007 range. Like I think it was, I don't know, and it's just the nostalgia, that's how it works. But it's like it's just the first time I remember feeling a lot of the way that those songs would make me feel, and you can't really recapture that feeling again once you've heard it, and that's why I understand when people are like, oh, I love your first record, I love, no song will ever top this for me. I'm like, yeah, because it's the first time where you had a song like make that sort of impact on your life, and nothing could top that, because you can't feel that exact way ever again. But I think there is something to be said for, looking at the big picture of a band's discography and not having to love every song. I don't even love every song of ours. I'm not going to expect our fans to love every song of ours.
Yeah.
And I think like when I was younger, I probably like had that more of like leading with my ego, and we all were in the band where it was like, every song's great, we're killing it, we love this is the word alive, take it or leave it. Now I'm like, connect with what you connect with, and whatever you don't, that's okay. It's not meant for you, it's meant for someone else, or it's a song that we needed to express and write that could take us to this next song that we now can experience.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. Like Witness by Bless the Fall is still like my favorite metalcore album ever. So like that whole time period is completely like timeless in my opinion. But we got to make a tour happen. A Fear and Faith reunion with Texas in July. I Wrestled a Bear once. Woe Is Me. Who else? I Set My Friends on Fire. Like.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
It would be a really cool like throwback festival idea to like get a bunch of bands to like play those songs from like 15 years ago.
Or I might have just said the When We Were Young festival lineup 10 years from now. So like.
Yeah. True.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for always just a great conversation. Is there just anything else with the Word Alive, with the release of Hard Reset, you'd like to promote in terms of tours that have been announced, or what else we could be expecting?
Yeah, we're headlining this summer. We do 4 shows with Under Oath, The Ghost Inside, and We Came as Romans, and then we hit the Hard Reset tour. We're playing 15 songs from 15 years, at least one song from every release. So there's something for every era of fandom within our fan base to enjoy. And then the album comes out August 25th. We're gonna be out. Probably November, December, and we have like a bunch of stuff in the works or on the books already. So we're gonna have a busy album cycle for Hard Reset.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much. Everybody, we are here with Telle of The Word Alive. Hard Reset coming out very soon. Be sure to pick that up. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.